The grand restaurant sparkled with golden lights, the kind of place where silence carried its own elegance, and every corner seemed to whisper wealth. At a corner table sat Adrian Cole, one of the youngest self-made millionaires in the city. His presence alone turned heads, not only because of his tailored suit and commanding aura, but because his name had become synonymous with success, resilience, and brilliance in business. People often looked at him and thought he had it all. Yet, in the midst of this glamorous evening, Adrian's eyes froze on something that made the polished glass in his hand tremble slightly. A waitress in a simple uniform, moving with quiet efficiency between tables, caught his gaze. For a fleeting second, he thought his eyes were deceiving him. She turned, balancing a tray, and in that single glance the years melted away. Her face, though matured, lined with the exhaustion of long days, was unmistakable. Emily Carter. The girl who once sat beside him in class, the girl who shared notes, who defended him when others mocked his worn-out shoes, the girl with laughter that could dissolve the weight of any day. But now, she wore a weary smile, one that tried to mask struggle but couldn't quite hide the tiredness in her eyes. Adrian leaned back, his mind a storm. Memories came flooding back. Studying under dim lights in the library, her encouraging words before exams, the way she once slipped half her lunch into his bag when she noticed he had none. She had been kindness in human form. Yet life had placed her here, serving tables, invisible to those who thought themselves above her. As Emily approached his table, she did not immediately recognize him. Her attention was on the tray, the guests, the etiquette drilled into her shift. "Good evening, sir. May I take your order?" she asked with practiced politeness. Adrian's heart pounded. He could have revealed himself immediately, greeted her like the long-lost friend she was. But he watched, studying the details, how her hands trembled slightly as she balanced plates, how her uniform sleeves were frayed, how she forced a smile even when a wealthy patron dismissed her with a wave. Finally, when she placed a glass of water before him, he said softly, "Emily Carter. It's been a long time." Her eyes widened, confusion flickering, then recognition struck like lightning. The glass in her hand nearly slipped. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice shaking. The millionaire smiled faintly, almost boyishly, as though they were back in that old classroom. "It's me." For a moment, time stopped. The restaurant faded, and all that remained were two friends reconnecting through a fragile thread of memory. But then reality rushed back. Emily straightened, masking the shock with a professional facade. "It's good to see you again. I didn't expect," she hesitated, eyes lowering. "I didn't expect you here." Adrian noticed the walls she quickly built around herself, the pride that wouldn't allow vulnerability to show. "Nor did I expect to see you," he said gently. "Life is full of surprises." She nodded quickly, excused herself with a hurried, "I'll be back with your order," and disappeared into the kitchen. But Adrian wasn't fooled. He had seen the glimmer of embarrassment, the hesitation of someone who did not want her old friend to witness her circumstances. As the evening unfolded, Adrian's thoughts warred with themselves. Should he act? Should he simply let her be, respecting the path she chose? Or should he step in, remembering all the times she stepped in for him when he had nothing? The boy inside him, the one she once protected, refused to sit idle. Emily returned several times to his table, avoiding prolonged eye contact, her cheeks flushed with discomfort. He noticed how the manager scolded her harshly over a minor mistake, how she apologized with bowed head though the fault wasn't hers. Each moment pierced him deeper. This was not the life she deserved. Finally, when the meal ended and the bill was discreetly placed before him, Adrian signed not only a number that left the staff gasping, but also left behind a small folded note beneath the receipt. Emily returned to clear the table and, spotting the paper, hesitated before slipping it quietly into her pocket. Later that night, in the dim light of her modest apartment, Emily unfolded the note. Her breath caught as she read, "You once gave me hope when I had none. Let me return that gift. Meet me tomorrow at noon. Same park bench by the old school." Her hands shook. She remembered that bench. How many afternoons had they spent there, sharing stories of dreams bigger than the world they knew? Tears welled in her eyes. Part of her longed to go, part of her feared what it might mean. But in her heart, she knew she couldn't ignore it. The next day, Emily found herself at the park, her plain clothes a stark contrast to Adrian's tailored grace. Yet, when he saw her, Adrian stood as if greeting royalty. The bench creaked as they sat, silence stretching before words finally came. "I know you're wondering why I asked you here," Adrian said, his voice steady, but but his eyes softened by memories. I saw you last night, Emily, and it broke me. Not because of where you work, but because I remember who you are, your brilliance, your strength, your kindness. You don't belong in the shadows. You've always deserved the light. Emily's lips parted, her pride and pain colliding. Adrian, life doesn't always give us choices. We take what we can. Dreams are expensive. Then let me help pay for them, Adrian said firmly. Not as charity, not out of pity, but as someone who owes you more than he can ever repay. You helped me survive when no one else cared. I wouldn't be here without you. And I will not sit by while life steals your spark. Her eyes brimmed with tears she tried to suppress. And what do you expect in return? He smiled softly, almost the way he did when they were children. Nothing, except maybe the chance to see you smile again. Not the one you wear for strangers, but the real one I remember. Emily turned away, staring at the trees swaying gently in the wind. Her chest rose and fell with the weight of emotions too long buried. Adrian, you don't know how hard it's been. How much I've lost. Then let's start finding again, he said quietly. Together. For the first time in years, Emily allowed herself a fragile smile, though tears still streaked her cheeks. The boy she once helped had returned, but now he was a man offering her the same gift she once gave him. Hope. And that was the beginning of something neither of them expected. Emily sat in silence for a long while, her fingers intertwined on her lap as though she were holding herself together. The weight of the years, of struggles she had endured quietly, seemed to press heavily on her shoulders. Adrian didn't rush her, didn't interrupt the storm of emotions playing across her face. He simply waited, steady and calm, offering her the space she had once offered him back when he was nothing but a boy with too many burdens and too few choices. Finally, she exhaled, her voice trembling but resolute. You make it sound so simple, Adrian. But life doesn't unfold like some fairy tale. You can't just step in and erase the years I've spent fighting for scraps of dignity. Adrian leaned forward, his gaze unyielding yet tender. I don't want to erase them, Emily. Those years made you who you are. I just don't want them to break you. You were the one who always believed in me when no one else did. Now let me believe in you. Her throat tightened, and she shook her head as though to ward off the dangerous comfort his words carried. Yet, beneath the skepticism in her eyes, there flickered a faint light, fragile, hesitant, but undeniably alive. Adrian continued softly. Do you remember the night before our final exams? You told me that even if I failed, it wasn't the end. That failure was just a page, not the whole book. You made me feel like my story mattered. And because of that, I pushed harder. I survived. I succeeded. Emily, you gave me the courage to rewrite my destiny. And now, it's time for me to return the favor. She bit her lip, emotions warring within her. For years she had carried herself alone, wearing her resilience like armor. To let someone step inside that armor felt terrifying. Yet, sitting there, she remembered the boy who once shared sandwiches with her when she forgot her lunch, the boy who walked her home when bullies followed. He was no longer that boy, but the essence of him remained unchanged. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke. And what if I've forgotten how to dream, Adrian? What if that part of me is gone? Then, he said with quiet conviction, I'll help you remember. The words lingered in the air, simple yet powerful. Emily turned her face away, wiping her tears discreetly, but Adrian caught the gesture. He did not call attention to it. Instead, he leaned back, giving her space, his eyes tracing the familiar park where so many of their childhood memories had been born. The swing set they once fought over. The fountain they dared each other to dip hands into during winter. Every corner whispered of who they used to be, and perhaps who they still were beneath the weight of time. You haven't changed, Emily murmured at last, almost in disbelief. The world gave you money, power, recognition. Yet you're still the same Adrian who scribbled notes on the back of torn paper and laughed too loudly in class. He chuckled, shaking his head. I'd like to think success didn't strip me of everything that mattered. Money builds walls around people, Emily. But you remind me of the foundation before the walls existed. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw not the millionaire the world adored, but the friend she once trusted with her secrets. The contrast between who he had become and who she had been reduced to was stark, yet in that moment, the gap seemed to shrink. The conversation stretched, moving between silences and bursts of memory. She told him pieces of her story, her father's sudden illness, the bills that had swallowed her savings, the job she had taken to keep a roof over her mother's head. Each word carried weight, But Adrian listened as though every detail was sacred. Not once did he interrupt with solutions. He let her speak, let her unburden, and in that listening, she felt a relief she hadn't known in years. When she finished, her eyes glistened, but her spirit seemed lighter, as if shedding years of silence had cracked open the shell of her pain. Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I know you don't want charity, Emily. I wouldn't insult you with that. But I also know opportunities often come disguised as lifelines. Inside this is not money, it's a door. A chance to step into something new. What you do with it is entirely up to you." She stared at the envelope, hesitant, her pride a sharp blade. "What's inside?" "A position at one of my firms. Something suited to your skills. A starting point, nothing more. No strings, no obligations. Just a chance." Emily's fingers trembled as she accepted the envelope, but didn't open it immediately. Instead, she looked at him long and hard, as though searching for hidden motives. "Why me, Adrian? Out of everyone you could help, why me?" His answer was simple, unshaken. "Because when I was invisible, you saw me. And no one has ever mattered to me more than the people who chose to see me when I was nothing." Her chest tightened, tears threatening again, but this time she did not fight them. She let them fall, silent witnesses to the storm of gratitude, pain, and longing within her. For the first time in years, she felt the warmth of being valued. Not as a worker, not as a servant to circumstance, but as a human being with worth beyond measure. They sat there until the afternoon sun dipped lower, painting the park in hues of gold. Adrian spoke of possibilities, of rediscovering herself, of remembering the dreams she once tucked away. Emily listened, her heart caught between caution and hope. Yet hope, however faint, began to stretch its wings. As the day waned, Adrian rose, offering her his hand, not in superiority, but in friendship. She took it, and for a fleeting second, the years of hardship seemed to fade, replaced by the familiar comfort of an old bond renewed. They walked away from the bench together, unaware of where the road might lead, but certain of one truth: that life had given them both a second chance at something greater than success, greater than survival. It had given them the chance to rediscover not just each other, but themselves. As the weeks unfolded, Emily's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. At first, she resisted stepping into Adrian's world. She hesitated before walking into the towering glass building that bore his company's name, her heart pounding with the weight of doubt. She wondered if she truly belonged, if she was worthy of the seat Adrian had reserved for her. But the moment she entered, she was greeted not as a charity case, not as a forgotten figure dragged into success by pity, but as someone valued for her sharp mind, her resilience, and her quiet strength that hardship had carved into her character. Adrian had made it clear to everyone: Emily Carter was there because she had earned it. Slowly, she began to rediscover the parts of herself she thought life had buried. Her confidence, once dimmed by years of servitude, returned like a flame rekindled. She spoke up in meetings, her ideas crisp and insightful, surprising even herself at times. She realized that the girl who once dreamt under the shade of the schoolyard tree still lived within her. She had only been waiting for permission to breathe again. And with each passing day, Emily's laughter began to return, the genuine kind that carried warmth and sincerity, the kind Adrian remembered so vividly from their youth. But this story was never just about opportunity. It was about transformation, about the invisible threads of destiny that bind lives across time. Adrian watched Emily grow with quiet pride, never imposing, never overstepping. He simply stood as a guardian, a reminder of what faith in another human being can do. And though the world outside saw him as a millionaire untouchable in his success, in those moments with Emily, he was simply Adrian, the boy who once sat at a weathered desk and dreamed of a future too far to grasp. One evening, as the city's skyline shimmered against the setting sun, Emily stood on the rooftop terrace of the company, gazing at the horizon. Adrian joined her, his presence calm yet grounding. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and wonder. "It feels surreal," she said softly, "to stand here now, when not long ago I was serving tables, invisible to the very people I smiled at every day." Adrian smiled, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Surreal, yes, but not undeserved. The world may have tried to convince you that your worth was measured by the uniform you wore, but I knew better. I always did." Her chest tightened as she absorbed his words. "You changed everything, Adrian. I don't know how to ever repay you." He looked at her then, his expression softened by sincerity. Emily, you already have. You repaid me years ago when you believed in me without asking for anything in return. What I've done is not repayment. It's a continuation of the cycle you began. You gave me hope when I had nothing. I'm only returning it. Tears glistened in her eyes, but this time they weren't born of sorrow. They were born of release, of recognition that her story had not ended in quiet obscurity. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to embrace the truth that perhaps, just perhaps, life still had something magnificent in store for her. Word of Emily's rise began to spread quietly within the company. Employees admired her humility, her wisdom, and the authenticity she carried. She never spoke of the hardships she had faced, never paraded her past for pity. Instead, she let her actions speak, inspiring others to see that greatness is not reserved for the privileged, but for those who dare to rise when life tries to keep them down. Her presence reminded them that success is not about where you begin, but about the courage to keep moving forward. And Adrian, though proud of her professional growth, cherished something far deeper. He cherished the way her spirit healed, the way her laughter filled spaces that once felt hollow. For him, success had always been about more than numbers and headlines. It was about people, about the souls who shaped the journey. And Emily Carter was the cornerstone of his own. Months later, the two found themselves once more at the park, seated on the same bench where everything had begun again. The trees whispered with the wind, and children's laughter echoed across the field. Emily looked around with a smile, her eyes alight with a peace she had long forgotten. Funny, she mused, how this bench has seen us at our lowest and our highest. It feels like it's a witness to everything we've been through. Adrian chuckled softly. Maybe it's more than a bench. Maybe it's proof that life has a way of bringing us back to where we need to be, to remind us of who we were and who we can become. She turned to him then, her voice filled with a quiet strength. I used to think my story was over, Adrian. That life had decided for me, and I had no say left. But now I see it differently. The story wasn't over. It was just waiting for the right chapter to begin. And with those words, something shifted, not just in Emily, but in Adrian as well. For both of them, life had come full circle. What began as a chance meeting in a glittering restaurant had blossomed into a profound journey of renewal, of rediscovering hope, of rewriting destinies that once seemed sealed. The Millionaire and the Waitress. The world would have labeled them as opposites, as two lives too far apart to ever intertwine again. Yet destiny cared little for labels. It cared only for the invisible threads of kindness, loyalty, and faith that endure across time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with gold and crimson, Adrian and Emily sat side by side, no longer defined by the roles life once forced upon them, but by the bond that had outlived years of silence and hardship. Their story was not about wealth or poverty, not about power or struggle. It was about the extraordinary beauty of recognizing someone's worth when the world refuses to, and the transformative power of giving hope where it is needed most. Emily Carter had once been a waitress serving tables in quiet obscurity. But to Adrian, she was the friend who gave him wings when his world was too heavy. And to herself, she had become the woman who finally remembered how to dream again. The conclusion was not an ending, but a beginning, an eternal reminder that sometimes the most unexpected encounters have the power to change everything, to awaken what has been lost, and to light a path where none seemed to exist. And so their story lived on, not in wealth or in titles, but in the quiet magnificence of two lives forever intertwined by kindness, loyalty, and the unshakable belief that no one is ever truly forgotten when someone chooses to remember.